Hey everyone, this is Effort Effects, and today we're going to be covering villains. This video will be helpful for villains and antagonists as well, so we've got a double whammy. Let's jump right in. Villains are people too, which is why you should treat them like every other character in your book in terms of design. So, design them with as much love and care as you do your MC. Most people tend to be able to create characters that run along with the MC really easily. Most people are able to do this because they understand the MC or their friends, as most characters are an extension of your personality. This is because you're probably not evil. Or well, I hope not. Most people struggle to get into the mindset of a person who would hurt and kill others for their goal, which is why most people struggle with this. I'm going to clarify it though, because I'm a psycho. I mean, just look at that face. You can't trust it. To make matters worse, not many of you probably even know people like this or associate with them at all. I'm blessed for this video only to be brought up really poor. Hence I was always around some genuinely bad people. For a gauge, my next door neighbour was murdered by men rushing into his house with bats, axes and knives, and they did a few things I'm not going to mention in case YouTube come at me. This isn't a joke, I'm absolutely serious. That's a story for another time, and I know most of you haven't had this. For this I'm really happy, but it unfortunately means you haven't had any experience to base a villain off. This is the reason why I believe so many people can't write a good villain. So if we can't run off experience, let's break it down with theory. Villains with a believable motivation. Avoid the whole black and white, I'm evil just because I am, and focus on motivation instead, as it's a cornerstone of a good villain and will help you draw off the kind of motivation experience they have. Villains have 4 different levels. Pure evil. This is your typical villain that is just evil, there's no other way to define them. You will struggle to have even a drop of empathy for them, and they have typically little or no excuse for being bad, they just are. Empathetical. These types of villains are ones we can at least get a grasp of, even if we don't like what they do. These villains, for example, could have had bad childhoods, which meant in later life they strike out and hurt people. They were brought up in a wrong situation. We still don't like them as characters, we still hate them and completely disagree, but we have a drop of empathy for them and at least foreignly or distantly understand why they are the way they are. This is a really nice character, but they're still mostly just evil, but you're like, oh, I get where the evil comes from though. Understandable. These are characters that we can understand completely, even if we don't agree with what they do. They could want to be accepted by a society or parent that shunned them, they act out and do some bad shit. Yes, we disagree with them murdering millions of people, yet we understand why they're doing it. This is a little bit different. It's the understandables, they have more of a justifiable reason to lash out. Again, like with empathetical, we don't agree with them, but they might have a genuine reason. They try and fix their problem, their situation, and things just keep going bad for them to the point they break. This is a little further on than empathetical, as they do have a point, but what they do because of this point is crazy. Understand/agree. Here we have our final big category of villain, and my personal favourite. This is a villain some people will agree with, some will disagree with, but even if they do disagree, they see how the villain could be right. They're typically trying to do something really good, but their means are very evil. It's a grey area and difficult for people to agree or disagree entirely. Everyone will see their point very clearly. So let's look at their motivations and goals. Pure evil. Typically their goal is usually controlling or enslaving a planet, or just saying screw it and killing everyone. Sauron again is a great example. He wants power, he was manipulated by it, and that's pretty much his motivation. Normally these kind of characters are inhuman or just not human at all and just an entity, which means they're very difficult to empathize with, but they are a great placement for your MC to try and go and attack because it's very black and white. Empathetical. X-Men's Magneto is easily empathetical. His goal? To wipe out the human race or turn everyone into a mutant or make humans below them. He goes way too far and is still seen as a villain, but we can see why he's acting out. The way his life has went, how much hardships he's had to go through. Instead of trying to be more like Xavier and rising above it, he just goes the completely wrong way. We understand and have empathy for his situation, but feel like there's other ways it could be done, and he's acted out way too much. Trying to kill every human being on the planet is a little far. So we have to try and change that. Understandable. The motivations are similar to the empathetical ones, except we're a little bit more on their side. We can almost cheer for these characters and maybe would do the same ourselves. Loki from Thor is a great example. His motivations were simple. He felt like he wasn't part of his family. Even though we the readers see that the family really did love him, we can see why he thinks it though. We all understand the feeling of being rejected. I mean, killing planets filled with people is maybe, a little of an overreaction, but hey, he wants his throne back, he's a genuine strike towards it, and he becomes more understandable as we go along. People, as the movies went on, we understand his motivation. We've seen there was love in his heart and he really did want to become better, and he does become better. This is why he's understandable, whereas Magneto, from empathetical, never really turned. He tried at the start, then just snapped and wouldn't come back. Loki, after he gets what he wants, pretty much stops, and he's not really crazy. We just understand he lashed out at one thing. Magneto, on the other hand, would have ended up ruling the world. It's a small difference, but notable. Understand/agree. I have one word for you, well, more one character for you. Thanos. He wanted to wipe out half of all life in the universe. His motivation? He's seen his planet die off due to overpopulation and fighting over resources that increased in rarity. This is associated to our current world as we're running out of fossil fuels and we're running out of a lot of resources and we're being quite greedy. Some of you think he was right, that he should have done it, and others thinks he's going too far. I've heard arguments over this, which to me makes him a fantastic villain. This is the golden standard everyone should try and get to. As you can see, the rhyme and reasons of these characters are very, very different. You must pick one that fits your story, that fits into your world, that fits versus your MC. There is no right or wrong answer, but here's a few examples. Writing a sword and shield fantasy? Pure evil is a good candidate. This puts world and adventure to the forefront. You want the characters to win versus the horrible odds and the evil, evil Dark Lord. Lord of the Rings done it well and it worked well. Writing a story that requires two parts of the world to go to war? Maybe you want the enemy faction to have a point, but clearly going way too far. You don't want your reader feeling bad for them when they're getting slaughtered, so empathetical gives you this kind of middle ground. Or you could push it to understandable so that your character wants the war to stop. Do you see how it can be manipulated to change to what kind of situation you want? This is why it's so important to understand the distinctions. Another example. You're writing a dystopian book on a corporation that is about to release nanites into everyone's body so they can live on Earth's barren hellscape. The cost? It will kill a third of the planet's population. Understandable, even agree could work for this. Remember, this is up to you, just pick carefully. Worthy rival. Most rivals are either too weak or too powerful, which is far, far more common. Before I get into this, my girlfriends did the chibi and she did a good job, and she did warn me at a knife point that I will not change the character, but she wasn't here, and CJ, just note, this is the best I can do, okay? Too weak or homeless by the looks of the picture. I've seen some villains who begin the book as powerful as the MC. This limits growth for the MC and begs the question, why not just gang up and kill this homeless guy? Too powerful. This is far more common. Some villains have the power of a god. Once this type of villain is written, you have to resort to using Deus Ex Machinas to give your MC even a spark of a chance to go toe-to-toe with your enemy. Just right. To make your villain just right, design them to be far more powerful at the start, and they're seemingly impossible to beat until the end of the book. Have the villain grounded enough to actually defeat if your character trained and was good later on. It's important to note this isn't limited to It's important to note that it isn't limited to physical power though. Maybe he's great at gathering a lot of people, maybe he can manipulate situations to his advantage or have a lot of masterful plans. Maybe he's ridiculously smart, always finding his way out of any problem. Whatever it is, make sure they're powerful enough to hold the mantle of your main villain without going overboard. Show how bad the villain is. I don't want to see villains being said to be evil. Oh, they're very, very evil. I want to see them killing people. You don't want to show them early. I want to see their soldiers ransacking a village, burning it down under the villain's orders. This shows they're evil. A lot of books of characters commenting on how evil the villain is. I don't want to only hear about it, I want to see it. Villains need a face. I'm not saying you need to show them immediately, but I'm saying they need to be one or maybe multiple bad people in particular. The key word being people, or aliens, or orcs, or whatever. Ensure there's someone at the helm. I never want to see a corporation being bad. I don't want to see the CEA being bad. I want to see Thomas the Tank Engine and his ridiculous murderous tanks. I want to see him as the leader. I want to see something at the helm. If you don't give someone at the helm, there's nothing to attack, and it just feels like you're just attacking money and just random goons that are undirected. This is probably the worst type of villain people can do, so don't do corporations as villains. Have a leader of the corporation, and that's your enemy. Perfect. Your villain's presence. Throughout your book, I want to see your villain's presence, if not physically, then socially. You can have soldiers roaming searching for your MC. You can have your MC walking through villages he's burnt down. Your character could go to pubs and hear people complaining about how bad they are in hushed whispers. Maybe people are afraid to say anything bad about you-know-who. This is a constant presence, even when there's nothing directly bad happening. You should always feel like the villain's affecting or changing the world in some way, shape or form, and that will really enhance their presence. Your villain's henchmen. I don't see these talked about enough. What do they think of the villain? Do they respect their boss? Do they fear him? These guys are your villain's supporters. They should reflect him. They should believe in a lot of what the villain believes, or they should idolize him if the villain's a good manipulator. If the villain won't kill innocents, they shouldn't either. They only kill people that are directly associated with what they need to do. That would be following your villain. The villain thinks that a certain religious book is evil, the henchmen should burn them. Not only because they're ordered to, but because they believe in his beliefs. In my book, I've got henchmen speaking about their boss and agreeing with what he actually says. They idolize his perspective on what he wants to achieve. They don't regret joining, and they love the fact that they've joined. Henchmen aren't just people who only follow orders, they're real people. I'm going to do a video on this later on because I have a lot to say about it. Inhuman villains. Sometimes villains ain't human. They're a floating eye, they're a demon, they're a floating god, be it from shadows. They can't be related to like humanoids, like elves, fae, demigods, wizards, or of course, humans. When using this type of villain that you as a writer can barely imagine, never mind directly relate to, it's difficult to make them a character that you can fear or understand. This limits what you can do with this type of villain. To solve this problem, you'll need your characters to humanize their fear and relate that to the reader. For example, in Lord of the Rings, Frodo struggles with the ring, he slowly turns evil, and he changes. And of course, the entire cast have a fear of the eye, and the other characters' fear gives it more human element that is actually something to relate to, because they're relating to the emotions of the characters, because they can't relate to a massive floating eye. And that's it for the video, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you found it useful and maybe even enjoyed it. For those of you that got this far, go into the comments and write me up a super awesome villain with an awesome, interesting motivation. I can't wait to read them. Beyond that, have a great day. Best of luck in the book, and take it easy.